All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Detective Dreyer, that's spelled D-R-E-Y-E-R. I'm with the Mesa Police Department's Public Information Office. We are out here today for an officer-involved shooting that occurred. So just after 2 a.m., we responded to a call for service for a man who was possibly impaired that was trespassing on a property. The caller wanted this person trespass. When officers got on scene, they were able to locate the man inside of his vehicle. The man was immediately confrontational with officers and not listening to our directions. The man ended up fleeing from our officers. A short time later, we were able to use the Grappler device to immobilize the vehicle. The man continued to not be compliant with officers' directions, even attempting to accelerate and break that Grappler device. However, it remained intact and immobilized the vehicle as it's designed. Officers attempted to use less lethal munitions to gain compliance from the subject. However, he continued to not listen to the officer's directions. After a short standoff, the man fired rounds from inside of the vehicle towards officers, striking one of them. That officer received an injury and was transported to the hospital, where he is in stable condition. The officers on scene that remained on scene continued, even despite the fact that an officer was injured, continued to try to get the man to listen to directions and follow commands. Eventually, additional less lethal munitions were deployed. A short time later, after a continued standoff, officers heard a gunshot come from inside the man's vehicle, and he slumped over. A short time later, the man was pronounced dead at the scene. There were multiple officers that fired their weapons. I don't have the exact number. That's all part of the investigation. I can tell you that Gilbert Police Department will be conducting the investigation of the officer-involved shooting under EVCRT. So they would be able to answer any questions involving that portion. We will maintain, obviously, the primary investigation. And those questions would come to us. As you can tell, it's a little loud, so it's a little hard to hear.
So do you believe if the man took his own life, then part of this, or that's part of the investigation, the early indications is that he died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound or part of the shootout with police?
So just to clarify, you're asking if the man took his own life, you're confirming that information? At this time, I don't have that information. What I can tell you is that's all going to be part of our investigation. There's a lot of moving parts to this. Although, we did hear a gunshot come from inside, I can't tell you that that's what ultimately led to this man's death. So that's just going to be part of our investigation, okay?
Where was the officer shot on his body?
I don't know the exact location, and that's something that we'll look into. That'll all be part of that investigation. But right now, I can tell you that the injury was non-life-threatening, and he is in stable condition at this point.
We heard there were roughly 20 to 30 gunshots. That's at least what a witness said. Are you able to confirm that?
I can't confirm that. Even looking at the body cam, that's all going to be part of our investigation. Different angles, different cameras, things like that. So that's going to be all part of that investigation.
You said it was an investigation for trespassing, so it has nothing to do with the airport. The man wasn't going to the airport or anything like that?
I can't speak to where the man was going. All I can say is that we were called for a trespassing call for service. When we contacted him, he was in a parking lot and then fled from officers, leading him to where the vehicle is now in the road.
When do you expect this area to reopen?
Based on where we're at in the investigation, I would anticipate probably still another few hours at least. Investigations of this magnitude could take longer, but I would definitely venture to say at least another few hours.
Hearing from a witness that was essentially caught in the crossfire is what it sounds like. I know your officers were using less lethal methods to try to mitigate that. So could you kind of touch on what is going on in that moment, knowing that potentially there are witnesses nearby who, fear for their lives almost in a situation?
Yeah, so when officers, I won't speak to this investigation, but in general, when officers respond to these types of incidents and we're deploying, whether it be less lethal or lethal munitions, the community safety is our utmost priority. So usually what we'll see is officers will end up being that buffer between if there's cars in the road or what have you. They're also taking into account, the businesses around them, potential pedestrians, things like that. So I can't speak to the specifics of this investigation, but generally speaking, officers will attempt to put themselves in that line of fire to protect those citizens.
You mentioned your officer is in stable condition. Is he out of the hospital, or is he still in the hospital getting cared for?
Last word I got, he was still in the hospital. I know we've had multiple officers go and check on him. Last I heard, he was still in the hospital.
As a detective, I know you probably handle situations like this a lot. How tough is it knowing it's one of your own who was involved?
Anytime anyone is injured by gunfire, it hits close to home. In this specific instance, like I had mentioned, officers maintained their focus on the scene. We ensured that the officer got aid, but they also were then still focused on trying to get that man to surrender peacefully. So at this time, I don't really have anything further. I will be sending out a news release, okay, that'll kind of cover all this information. Like I said, this investigation is going to be ongoing. I don't anticipate having any major updates, but when we do, we'll send that out as well.
Detective Dreyer.
One last question. So who made contact with you initially? Was that the security? Was it an officer from the airport? Do you have that information?
I don't have that specific information. I know it was a caller. I don't know specifically where they were employed. I can't speak to the specific items. I know that less lethal munitions sometimes have items that are left behind. That could be it, but specifically, I'm unsure. Okay, thank you.
Your first name? I don't think you said.
Sorry, John, John. Thank you.
Thank you.